Imagine this, a ringtone. A mundane, everyday sound. The kind you barely register, the kind that blends into the background of our lives. But what if that simple, electronic chime, that ordinary interruption, was the catalyst for a chain of events so utterly bizarre, so deeply unsettling, that it defied all logic? What if that single phone call, answered in an unassuming kitchen, or a quiet office, or maybe even a bustling street corner, marked the beginning of a mystery that continues to haunt us? A mystery where the lines between reality and something else become blurred, where the familiar suddenly twists into something unrecognizable. Think about it. We answer our phones countless times a day. We receive calls from friends, family, work. We dismiss spam calls, we schedule appointments, we have casual conversations. We think nothing of it. It's part of the rhythm of modern life. But in this case, that ordinary act, that simple answering of a phone, set into motion a series of occurrences that would leave investigators, and everyone who heard the story, completely baffled. It wasn't the content of the call, not initially. It wasn't a threat, or a demand, or even a particularly strange conversation. It was the aftermath, the ripple effect, the almost imperceptible shift that occurred after the receiver hung up. The subtle changes in behavior, the unsettling coincidences, the gradual, almost creeping sense that something was deeply wrong. What if I told you that this single call, this seemingly insignificant moment, unlocked a door to a reality we don't fully understand? A reality where the mundane becomes extraordinary, where the everyday transforms into something chillingly unknown. What if I told you that this call was the beginning of a journey into a place where the rules of our world no longer apply? It started with a sense of unease. A feeling that something was off. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, like a change in the air pressure just before a storm. A feeling that something had been disturbed, something that should have remained undisturbed. The receiver, an ordinary person, noticed subtle changes. A misplaced object, a strange shadow, a sound that couldn't be explained. They brushed it off, of course. We all do. We attribute these things to stress, to imagination, to simple mistakes. But the changes persisted. Then came the coincidences. Uncanny, almost impossible coincidences. Patterns emerging where there should have been none. Connections forming between seemingly unrelated events. It was as if the universe itself was rearranging itself around this single, pivotal moment. As if that phone call had disrupted the delicate balance of reality. And then, the events escalated. The unsettling unease turned into something more tangible, something more frightening. The unexplained sounds became louder, the shadows became more distinct, the coincidences became more frequent, more alarming. The receiver, once an ordinary individual, found themselves caught in a web of events that defied all explanation. They were trapped, not by a physical force, but by a sense of dread, by a growing awareness that they had stumbled upon something beyond their comprehension. This wasn't a story of a violent crime, not in the traditional sense. There was no blood, no weapons, no obvious perpetrator. But there was a victim. A victim of circumstances, of an unseen force, of a reality that had been irrevocably altered. And there was a mystery that remains unsolved, a mystery that continues to haunt those who dare to delve into its depths. A mystery that started with a simple, ordinary phone call. We've just explored the unsettling premise of a simple phone call acting as a bizarre catalyst. Now, let's peel back a layer and begin to understand the actual case that unfolded. Tonight, we're focusing on the perplexing events surrounding the life of, for the sake of privacy, let's call her Ms. Eleanor Vance. Yes, like the character from that classic novel, but this is no fiction. This is a story that, while rooted in the everyday, quickly veered into the territory of the inexplicable. Eleanor was, by all accounts, an ordinary woman. A librarian, quiet and unassuming, living a routine existence in a small, quiet town. Her days were filled with the familiar rhythms of her job, the comfort of her small apartment, and the occasional chat with her neighbors. There was nothing remarkable about her life, nothing to suggest that she would become the center of a mystery that would baffle investigators and leave a community shaken. Then came the phone call. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a day like any other. Eleanor answered, a brief, unremarkable exchange followed, and then, nothing. Or so it seemed. The call itself was not the focus, it was the events that followed. Those events, they began subtly, almost imperceptibly. A feeling of being watched, a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye, a sense that something was amiss. These were the initial, unsettling signs. We're not talking about a violent crime, not initially. There was no break-in, no physical altercation. What we're dealing with is a creeping sense of unease, a gradual erosion of normalcy. It's the kind of story that makes you question the very fabric of reality, the kind that blurs the lines between what's real and what's something else. Eleanor began to notice patterns. Patterns that didn't make sense. Objects moving, not dramatically, but subtly, just enough to make her question her own memory. Sounds, faint and indistinct, that seemed to emanate from nowhere. These were not the dramatic manifestations of a horror movie, but something far more unsettling. They were the subtle, insidious changes that chipped away at her sense of security. And then, the coincidences. They started small, almost dismissible. A book falling off a shelf, a light flickering, a familiar song playing on the radio at an odd time. But they escalated, becoming more frequent, more pointed. It was as if the universe itself was trying to communicate something, to send a message that Eleanor couldn't quite decipher. This is not a story of a simple crime, it's a story of a disruption, a disturbance in the delicate balance of the everyday. It's a story that asks us to consider the possibility that there are forces at play that we don't understand, forces that can subtly alter our reality. We're not talking about ghosts or demons, or anything so easily categorized. We're talking about something far more unsettling, something that defies explanation. The authorities, when they were finally brought in, found themselves at a loss. There were no obvious signs of foul play, no physical evidence to explain the strange occurrences. They were left with a series of unsettling anecdotes, a collection of strange coincidences, and a growing sense that something was deeply wrong. What happened to Eleanor Vance? What was the significance of that phone call? These are the questions that continue to haunt those who have delved into this perplexing case. We're not here to provide easy answers, but to explore the unsettling mystery that unfolded in the quiet life of an ordinary woman. And to ask you, the viewer, to consider the possibility that the ordinary can, at any moment, become extraordinary, and perhaps, terrifyingly unknown. Let's delve deeper into the events that unfolded after that seemingly innocuous phone call. Eleanor, as we know, was a creature of habit. Her days were structured, predictable. Her apartment, a sanctuary of order, reflected her personality. But that order, that sense of control, began to unravel. The first noticeable change wasn't dramatic, but unsettlingly subtle. A book, a volume of Edgar Allan Poe, fell from its shelf. Not crashing, not with a loud thud, but sliding gently, as if nudged by an unseen hand. Eleanor, initially, dismissed it. Must have been loose, she'd muttered, replacing it. But the incident lingered in her mind, a tiny seed of unease. Then came the sounds. Faint whispers, rustling noises, the kind you attribute to the house settling. But these sounds were different. They seemed to emanate from within the walls, from the very air itself. It was like someone was breathing just behind me, Eleanor later recounted in a statement to the authorities. Not loud, but there. The coincidences began to escalate. A newspaper article detailing a strange, unexplained disappearance mirrored a conversation she'd had with a stranger on the bus. A song, a forgotten melody from her childhood, played repeatedly on the radio, at odd hours. It was always that song, a neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, recalled. She'd mention it, how it seemed to follow her. Eleanor's routine, once a source of comfort, became a source of dread. The library, her haven, felt different. She'd find books misplaced, notes scribbled in the margins, messages that seemed directed at her. "I found a page marked, a single sentence underlined," she told a friend. "It said, 'They are watching.' Just that. Nothing else." The authorities, initially skeptical, began to take notice. "We received reports of unusual activity," Detective Miller stated in an official report, "but there was no physical evidence of a crime. It was a series of occurrences." They interviewed neighbors, colleagues, friends. Everyone agreed Eleanor was changing. "She was different," Mrs. Henderson said, "like she was looking over her shoulder all the time." A twist emerged when investigators reviewed Eleanor's phone records. The call, the one that started it all, was traced to a payphone, a disused relic in a nearby town. No fingerprints, no witnesses. Just a dead end. But the records revealed something else, a series of missed calls, all from unknown numbers, all occurring in the days leading up to the initial call. "It was like someone was trying to reach her," Detective Miller explained, "but they weren't leaving messages. Just calling, then hanging up." The calls stopped after the initial incident, as if they had achieved their goal. Eleanor, increasingly isolated, began to document her experiences. She kept a journal, meticulously recording every strange occurrence, every unsettling coincidence. "It's like the world is shifting," she wrote, "like the rules are changing. I don't understand what's happening, but I know it's not normal." The journal entries became increasingly erratic, filled with fragmented thoughts and cryptic messages. "They are in the walls," she wrote, "they are in the air. They are everywhere." The last entry, dated a few days before her disappearance, simply read, "The door is open." Eleanor vanished. No trace, no sign. Her apartment was undisturbed, her belongings untouched. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. The investigation stalled. No body, no suspects, no answers. Just a series of unsettling questions and a lingering sense of unease. The phone call, the whispers, the coincidences, the journal entries, a puzzle without a solution, a mystery that continues to haunt the quiet town where Eleanor Vance once lived. We've walked through the unsettling sequence of events that enveloped Eleanor Vance, a woman whose life was seemingly altered by a single, ordinary phone call. We've explored the subtle shifts, the creeping unease, the baffling coincidences, and the ultimate, chilling disappearance. Now, as we consider the unanswered questions, I want to ask you, the viewer, something that has been weighing on my mind. Do you believe that these occurrences, these strange, inexplicable events, were simply a series of coincidences, a confluence of random, unrelated factors? Or, do you think there was something more, something unseen, something beyond our current understanding at play? Is it possible that Eleanor stumbled upon a reality that exists just beyond our perception, a reality that we are not meant to see? Think about the phone call itself. A call traced to a disused payphone, a relic of a bygone era. A call that triggered a cascade of unsettling events. Was it a random dial, a misdial, a simple mistake? Or was it something more deliberate, something that set in motion a chain of events designed to disrupt Eleanor's world? And the missed calls, the persistent, unanswered attempts to reach her. What was their purpose? Were they warnings, attempts to communicate something important? Or were they something else entirely, something more, predatory? The journal entries, the cryptic messages, the growing sense of dread. Were they the ramblings of a mind unraveling, the product of fear and isolation? Or were they a desperate attempt to document a reality that was slipping away, a reality that was being manipulated by an unseen force? These are not easy questions. There are no simple answers. But they are questions that we must ask, questions that we must consider if we are to truly understand the mystery of Eleanor Vance. And what about the town itself, the quiet, unassuming community where Eleanor lived? Did anyone else witness these strange occurrences? Did anyone else feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the creeping sense of unease? Or was Eleanor alone in her experience, isolated in her perception of a reality that was changing around her? I encourage you to share your thoughts, your theories, your interpretations in the comments below. Do you have any personal experiences with unexplained phenomena? Do you believe in the possibility of realities beyond our own? Let's discuss, let's explore these questions together. And if you found this exploration of the Eleanor Vance mystery compelling, if you're intrigued by the possibility of the unexplained, then please, consider subscribing to this channel. There are many more stories like this, stories that challenge our understanding of the world, stories that delve into the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. Share this video with anyone who might be interested, anyone who might have their own theories, their own insights to contribute. Let's build a community of those who are willing to question, to explore, to consider the possibility that there is more to this world than meets the eye. Because sometimes, the most unsettling mysteries are not the ones that are solved, but the ones that remain, lingering in the shadows, challenging us to confront the unknown. What do you think happened to Eleanor Vance? We've journeyed through the unsettling enigma of Eleanor Vance, a case that leaves us with more questions than answers. The phone call, the whispers, the shifting reality, all of it remains shrouded in a perplexing ambiguity. As we stand at the edge of this unsettling mystery, we're left to grapple with the profound unease that lingers. The absence of a definitive resolution is, perhaps, the most unsettling aspect of this case. There's no closure, no satisfying conclusion to tie up the loose ends. Eleanor Vance simply vanished, leaving behind a trail of strange occurrences and unanswered questions. And that, in itself, is a chilling testament to the unknown. We can speculate, we can theorize, we can dissect every detail, but the truth remains elusive. Did Eleanor stumble upon something beyond our comprehension? Was she a victim of an unseen force, a reality that shifted around her? Or was there a more mundane explanation, a series of coincidences that spiraled into a narrative of unease? The authorities, despite their best efforts, were unable to provide answers. The case remains open, a cold case, a testament to the limitations of our understanding. And perhaps, that's the point. Perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Perhaps they exist to remind us that there are forces at play, realities that we don't fully comprehend. We're left with the echo of unanswered questions. Did the phone call trigger a sequence of events that were already in motion? Were the missed calls attempts to warn her, or were they a part of a larger, more unsettling design? And what about the journal entries, the cryptic messages, the growing sense of dread? Were they a reflection of a mind unraveling, or were they a desperate attempt to document a reality that was slipping away? The silence that followed Eleanor's disappearance is deafening. It's a silence that speaks volumes about the unknown, about the mysteries that lie just beyond our perception. It's a silence that challenges us to confront the limitations of our understanding. This case remains one of the most perplexing mysteries, a chilling reminder that the ordinary can, at any moment, become extraordinary, and perhaps, terrifyingly unknown. Do you think Eleanor simply walked away, starting a new life under a new identity, or was she taken by something, some force, we can't understand? Could she have been driven to a place where the normal rules of our world no longer apply? And as we close this chapter, I want to leave you with a final thought. If the ordinary can become extraordinary, then what else lies hidden in the fabric of our reality? What other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered? What other stories are waiting to be told? If you found this journey into the mystery of Eleanor Vance unsettling, if you're intrigued by the possibility of the unknown, then I invite you to join us for our next exploration. We'll be delving into another case, another mystery that challenges our understanding of the world. It involves a small town, a series of strange lights, and a community that's been left shaken by unexplained events. Subscribe, and don't miss it.